Welcome to Caring Out Loud. Give yourselves a hand for being here. Thank you. I am Laura Collins. I am the Culture Change Manager at Family Values at Work, and this is part of our culture change work. We're using narrative tactics to make people understand that they are caregivers in their lives and care receivers every single day. Our leaders have made an economy that requires 2-3 incomes just to get by, and that's not even having a savings account, right? And there's no systems in place for us to be able to thrive, for us to be able to give the care to our loved ones that we need to give, for us to be able to give the care to ourselves that we need to give. And these structures are in place, and so we're here to share our stories, to make people understand, to make people feel connected to these caregiver stories that we're about ready to hear, and to make change. We've been working for 100 years to pass paid family and medical leave. Our organization has been working for 20 years. These policies are not going to happen until we change our culture, until we have different narratives to counteract the narratives of individuality, the narratives of, well, if you can't take care of your family, that's your own personal failing. Boo, right? No, it's not their own personal failing. We don't have the systems that we need, and we need to demand them. So we're changing those systems by making people understand so that they will be ready to engage the next time we have a federal paid leave bill. They'll be able to recognize themselves as a caregiver, and they need that, right? Next time there's a bill in your state, you're going to advocate, you're going to be ready. People are going to be ready if we can prime them and get them to understand these things, right? Yes. So you might be wondering, what's the deal with these candles? So I want to demonstrate, if you twist it ever so much to the right, the light comes on, okay? And to make it go off, you twist it ever so lightly to the other way, not too much or the batteries will fall out. So whenever you feel connected to, something that a storyteller says, whenever you feel like, that happened to me, or that happened to my sister, or yeah, that would have been really beneficial if I would have had that, if that would have happened to me, then please shine your light on the storyteller to show the storyteller that you feel connected, right? And then you can turn it off and then turn it back on next time you feel connected, okay? And then everyone in the audience can look around at other people's candles and realize we're all connected. We all have these same unique, right? We all have our unique caregiving stories, but if we all have them, then that means we all need the support. So, right? So let's build these connections. And some of these stories are going to hit on some nerves. Some of these stories involve real trauma. Some of these stories have colorful language. So I just wanted to give you a heads up about that right now. And I think we're ready to get started. I'd love to introduce Jennifer Morales. Jennifer is the Director of Learning and Culture Change, Movement Learning and Culture Change at Family Values at Work. She's my supervisor. I'm particularly fond of her. She's amazing. She is going to share her story, and she's also your MC for the night. But first, we're going to throw to a video. I'm going to let Jennifer introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Morales, and I hope you'll see me as a storyteller, a parent, and an activist for paid leave for all people. To me, caregiving is noticing when other people need help, is celebrating their strengths when other people need help, making sure we show up for all the things that they cannot do for themselves. My caregiving role model is definitely my friend Peter. He cared for his wife who had early onset Alzheimer's throughout her 10 years of decline, and ultimately she passed away literally in his arms. And he has just been such a model for care and how love can be expressed through small daily actions. Telling my story is important because I am the parent of adult children, and I think it's important for people to remember that being a parent can be a lifetime project. And I want people to know that this movement and the storytellers that will be featured are there with them as they go through a lifelong journey of being a parent.
It began with a creeping sense of dread. I had heard that my youngest son, Cedro, was sick, and then I hadn't heard anything. Now, like a lot of 20-somethings, Cedro is often not great at getting back to mom on text and phone. But this silence felt different. I texted him one evening before bed, and in the wee hours that night, I woke up and I could not get back to sleep. I gripped my phone, my eyes wide open, as if my very sense of determination could make him respond. At a more reasonable hour, I texted his brother, Jack, who lives with him in southern Florida, 1,500 miles away from my home in Wisconsin. These two brothers have lived together forever, and yet they're like two planets operating in separate orbits. So Jack was not exactly a font of useful information. I don't know, he's sick, I guess. That night, I barely slept. And by the third day, I was vibrating with dread. My partner and I did our weekend errands, and I texted Cedro as the sun in the afternoon sunlight was blinding me in the passenger seat of the car. I was willing him to respond. When he didn't, I barely let the car come to a stop in the garage before jumping out and running in the house to call his brother. Jack, you have got to go in his room. You've got to wake him up and find out what's going on. Jack went into Cedro's room as I asked, and I felt every mile between us, all 1,500 of them, as I waited to hear what was happening. I listened in, feeling every mile, as I heard Jack say, dude, Cedro, dude, wake up. Mom's on the phone. She wants to know what's going on. Cedro said something I couldn't hear. What did he say? He said he's cold and he can't move. Ask him if he's eaten anything today. He says he's eaten half a bagel and an apple, but he doesn't remember when. My heart sank. Jack got a few more details out of him. Cedro had had a positive COVID test a couple weeks before, and after the first initial intense illness had passed, he just kept getting weaker and weaker. We've got to get him to the hospital somehow, I thought. Getting him to the hospital seemed like a reasonable response, but not like 911 getting him to the hospital, right? I mean, is it an emergency if he's been like this for days? While I looked for flights to Florida, I asked Jack if he could figure out how to get Cedro to the hospital. I called medical transport places. Nobody answered. I called the local COVID testing clinic, see if they had any advice. They didn't have any. And I called the non-emergency police number. Also, they said, call the places I'd already tried. Jack didn't drive. I was in Wisconsin. Their roommate, soon to be ex-roommate, didn't want to transport a sick Cedro in his car. So we struggled to come to the decision that this was an emergency. I told Jack to call 911, and I looked up flights to Florida. While I was doing that with one hand, I had Jack still on the phone and instructed him he's got to get his brother out of the bed and get him dressed. The report back was not good. He says he's too weak to stand. He can't put on his pants. He says he'll try again tomorrow. Tomorrow? Hell no. I had a ride to the airport and a flight purchase by the time the EMTs came down the stairs with Cedro to their ambulance. I don't remember a lot about the trip to Florida the next morning, except this. It was June 2021. And there had been a lot of stories in the news about unruly airplane passengers making scenes about mask wearing, scenes that turned into fights that got planes diverted to unexpected airports so that the troublemakers could get escorted off. I boarded my plane like a mother bear, my shoulders wide, my eyes blazing. Over my mask, I looked at every passenger around me in turn. My message: this plane is getting to the Fort Lauderdale airport in one piece and on time. Fucking go ahead and try some shit and I will take you down myself. That's all I remember about that trip. Cedro had been in the hospital almost 24 hours by the time I got to Florida. The nurse's station wouldn't answer, but eventually Cedro texted me. He was still feeling quite weak, but they had put him on oxygen and he was improving slowly. They diagnosed him with post-COVID pneumonia, and he was not allowed visitors. For the next 5 days, I called the nurse's station every day. No answer. I called random phone numbers in the hospital, got put on hold, got hung up on. And in the absence of real information about my son's situation, I had only occasional texts from Cedro. When he started feeling a little stronger, he started inviting me to play Scrabble on our phones. And it wasn't much. I couldn't see my boy. But with each play of the game, I felt a moment of connection, another moment that he was alive. I kept myself busy doing piles of laundry and cleaning the boy's house. Cedro's bedroom was like a COVID-19 archaeological dig site. This was not the home, though, of some remote and ancient people. This was the space that my beloved son had spent 2 weeks of his life suffering, mostly alone. There was that plate with the half-eaten bagel and the apple core, the last thing he had eaten, who knows when. The wastebasket overflowed with tissues. There were empty bottles of over-the-counter cold medications that he had tried. There was a long receipt from Walgreens. When had he left the room? And most heartbreaking of all, a wristband from the ER or urgent care where he had tried to get help. And what? I didn't know. It crushed me to see the signs of his struggle all over this room. He had tried so many things to get help for himself by himself. The boys are good now. But this incident reminds me of some other time in our lives when we all lived in Milwaukee together, and Jack was very sick, the flu or who knows what. And he took the city bus from his college apartment to our house to crash on the couch. He didn't need anything from me except to watch over him while he slept. And it stuck with me, that idea of just being there for each other. The importance of staying alert to each other's conditions. It's how we keep each other alive. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for listening. So as Laura said, I have the pleasure not only of being a storyteller tonight, but also your MC. So I am getting to call up our next speaker. Keopu Reelitz is from Hawaii. She is the mom of 3 and a badass advocate for children and her indigenous Hawaiian community. She is the policy lead at Papa'ola Lokahi, a native Hawaiian health organization, and a volunteer with Hawaii's Children's Action Network, who is sponsoring her appearance here tonight. And here's a brief video for Keopu to introduce herself.
Hi, my name is Keopu Reelitz. I want you to see me as a proud native Hawaiian, as a mom of part Hawaiian, part Filipino kids, and as somebody who is deeply invested in making Hawaii a place for families where we can thrive, and especially for those of us who have called this place home for generations, that we ourselves could thrive. Caregiving has taught me that one of the greatest assets any employer, any team, any community can have is in building up our caregivers. Caregivers are some of the most resourceful, creative, bold thinking, and just hardworking people. Telling my story is important because some of the most loneliest days and months of my life were in the time after I gave birth to my first son. And for a long time, I thought there was something wrong with me because because of the best and the worst, and I felt the worst oftentimes. So sharing my story for me allows me to share with others that they're not alone, that it is really hard, but it is also filled with joy, and that we can get through this together.
I am standing in the governor's ceremonial room. I am tending to dignitaries. I'm welcoming reporters. I am leading this press conference like a boss, all while 9 months pregnant. I feel like I am on top of the world. Professionally speaking, I've got 2 jobs that I love. By day, I lead comms for a large state agency, and at night, I teach undergrads in topics that I adore. Personally, I am just days away from my due date, days away from meeting our first child. And my husband and I, we feel prepared. And yeah, sure, we've had those tough conversations and made those difficult decisions. Like childcare was probably gonna be unaffordable, so my husband was gonna stay at home, work 2 jobs, my husband was gonna stay at home, caregive for our son full time, and I continue to work those 2 jobs because I love that. It was gonna be tough, but we were gonna make it work. We were gonna make ends meet and do it together. The sad reality was because of that financial situation, we couldn't afford me taking any time unpaid, so I wasn't gonna get a real maternity leave. But again, we had a plan. I was gonna go back to work part-time, stretch out my leave for as long as I could, and make the best of it. And again, we're gonna do it together. Like I said, we were ready. And the universe agreed. Because within 48 hours of wrapping that press conference, I gave birth to our first child. And we were so in love. And as they say in parenting, those days, especially the early ones, they were long. But those weeks, they just flew by. And before I knew it, I was getting ready for my first day back in the office. Now, it was only 3 hours of work, but I still remember putting on that dark, dark navy dress, gray heels, and I remember vividly that it was quiet. I remember the quiet because there was nothing to distract me from the thoughts in my head, and they were not good thoughts. They were thoughts like, what kind of mom puts on a nice dress, nice heels, and goes into the office before her baby isn't even a month old? This is the first memory I have of putting these invisible weights on my shoulders. They were heavy. But I did what I needed to do. I stood tall, I stood strong, I took those weights and I went downstairs and I kissed my baby goodbye and I went into the office. And everything was going fine until I walked into the hallway and saw an admin from another office, and as soon as she saw me, her face changed and she was like, Keopu, what are you doing here? And I was like, here it comes. And here it came. First, it was that question, then a comment, then a question, and a comment, and a question, and a comment. And I'm sure she thought she was helping me, but all she was doing was amplifying those thoughts in my head until I just wanted to scream, I am the worst mother ever. And unwittingly, she was just putting more of those weights on my shoulders, and I was helping her. But again, I did what I needed to do. I stood strong, I stood tall, and I went back to my desk and I did my job. And I did that job day in and day out until days turned to weeks and weeks turned to months. And all throughout that time, I continued to put those weights on my shoulders. You know, there were some days when I wanted nothing more than to take those weights and throw them at the first person to say something along the lines of, well, if you're here, then who's taking care of the baby? Because you know what? That sucked. But no, that's not what good moms do. Good moms grin and bear it. Good moms know that babies are a blessing, and we count our blessings. We don't complain about them. And I wanted to be a good mom. So I shut my mouth and I kept on keeping on. There were other days where it was simple to carry that weight. I just floated by, and it was even an honor to carry it. But still, there were those soul-crushing days, like on Valentine's, when I wanted nothing more than to tell my baby he was my Valentine. But by the time I got home from teaching, he would not be woken. And now tell me, what kind of good mom can't even say happy Valentine to her baby? More and more, I just put those weights on my shoulders and they weighed me down heavier and heavier and heavier until one day my husband wanted to talk about sleep training. And I had been weighed down by so much for so long that I was basically Charlie Brown and he was the teacher. So while my recollection was kind of fuzzy, I'm pretty sure the conversation went a little like this. Womp womp, sleep train, womp womp. So when I go to work, he's gonna be asleep? Womp womp. Well, maybe, womp womp. And when I get home from teaching, he's gonna be asleep. Womp womp. Yeah, probably. Womp womp. So it's just like, it's gonna be like whole days where I just don't get to see my baby awake? Womp womp. Maybe. Womp womp. What do I look like? A fucking walking ATM? There are words that you speak that as soon as they leave your mouth, you know you are going to regret them until the day you die. It's like they leave your mouth like this puff of smoke. You watch them waft away and you can never take them back. These are words that I said to my husband, someone who I still consider to this day one of the greatest caregivers I have ever met. I said these words because I had finally broken under the weights I had put on my shoulders. And for the longest time, I thought that weight was guilt and shame and judgment. It took me years to realize that those weights were an unsatisfied desire to care for my baby. God bless my husband. He didn't send those hurtful words back to me. Being the caregiver he was, he said silently through acts of care, I see you. Let me lighten that load. And so from that day forward, if the baby was asleep when I went into work, My husband tried to keep him awake from when I got home, just so I could have a little bit of time with him. And on those extra long days, he made sure to send me videos to help me get through it. Brick by brick, my husband was helping to lighten those loads, that weight that I had put on my shoulders for so long. And in doing so, he unearthed an ache that I could not articulate at that time. And that ache was a desire to be Peely, to be close to my baby. So in caring for me, my husband helped me cultivate a relationship with that baby who is now 8 years old. And he is sitting in this audience tonight. And let me tell you, his brother and him who are here tonight are so stoked to be in Washington, D.C. with their mommy. I have been trying ever since to write those words, to pay it forward. And so I have pursued a career in which I get to fight for families like ours. And you better be damn sure that when I'm fighting for families, I'm not just fighting for more stuff. I'm fighting for policies and investments that help take these weights off our shoulders. Because most times, what caregivers need most is someone like my husband to say, I see you. You matter. Now come here. Let me lighten that load.
Thank you, Keopu, for an amazing story of family sticking together to lighten each other's loads. Our next storyteller is Preston Van Vliet of Michigan. Preston happens to be one of my rock star colleagues at Family Values at Work, the organization that's sponsoring tonight's event. Preston is our leading state policy organizer, which means he ensures that care policies that we advocate for are inclusive and accessible. I'll let Preston speak for himself in this video.
Hello, my name is Preston Van Vliet, and I want you to see me as a survivor, advocate, and as your friendly neighborhood queer and trans person. To me, caregiving is being able to show up with love and empathy when your person needs it. It's also when you need to know the logistics of what needs to be done, like what is their dose for the medication that they're taking, and what is their schedule of doctor's appointments, so that, you know, I can make sure I can be there to take them. Caregiving has taught me really just how short life is and how special it is to have the right resources at the right time to be able to provide care for my loved ones. Telling my story is important because I felt really isolated during these experiences, and by sharing them, it helps me to heal that pain through connecting with you all. And if my story can help someone else feel less alone, then what more could I ask for?
and I see these tall, dark shadows ahead of me on the sidewalk. And suddenly there was these like red flashes, like red so dark it could have been black. And maybe my vision had gotten colorless because it turned out I had been jumped by two strangers. They broke my nose, gave me a concussion, and broke my jaw in 7 places. But I really had no idea at the time what had just happened to me. I somehow walked to my apartment, unlocked both doors, and I start calling for my partner. And I remember not knowing why I was calling for him. He doesn't come downstairs, but instead his other partner, Artie, is the one who calls the ambulance and makes sure that I get to the hospital. Artie would later tell me that when my partner came downstairs, I started apologizing to him, saying, I'm sorry, as if I was scared that he was mad at me. It was Artie, who is another transgender person, who advocated for me at the hospital when the staff misgendered me, called me the wrong name. I was severely concussed, okay? Like I couldn't see well, couldn't hear well. Everything was just so shaky. It was like I was in an earthquake that was lasting for hours. So I really needed that support from Artie. My partner, who is not transgender, was there for some amount of time, but this dude, he freaking leaves the hospital without telling me and takes Artie with him. I felt so scared and alone and very confused. So it's the next day that I have jaw surgery to permanently implant the metal plates that are now in my upper jaw, right below my sinuses. And thus begins a 6-week ordeal of having my jaw wired and of living on a liquid diet. I had paid leave. Oh boy. I'm so glad that I did, because as you know, you cannot afford to live in DC unless you're getting paid somehow. So I get home from the hospital, and honestly, I have no idea how that happened. Nobody came to pick me up. I just appeared at my house somehow. And what does my partner do? He leaves town for work. And he had paid leave, but he sure as hell did not use it on me. I just felt like at my freaking wit's end about this dude. Like his controlling behaviors about my gender expression, that wasn't enough for me to break up with him. His choices to just peace out after top surgery instead of taking care of me, that wasn't enough. But this series of abandonments, this was enough. This was the pain that harkened a new beginning for me. But I just couldn't break up with him at that exact moment. I couldn't talk. And just with everything I had been through, like my brain, my head was just this like swollen red and purple tomato. I now believe that my grandma, who I'd been in mourning of when the assault happened, became my guardian angel for me at this time. That she saw the assault. She can now see me more clearly and who I was as a transgender person. And perhaps she saw the all too familiar abusive relationship that I had been in. So she made sure that I had help when I chose to accept that help. About a week after the assault, my blood was still all over the porch. No one had gone out there to clean it up. And so I decided I was gonna go do it. And Artie opens the door and tries to stop me from doing it. And I tell them to go back inside and that it had been long enough. It was time for me to do it now. I admittedly felt ashamed about what had happened to me and how this person, my person, who just should have been there for me, repeatedly was not. In my concussed brain, his abandonment of me was somehow my fault. So when he was gone and after he came back, it was my other chosen family who showed up to care for me when I let them. Artie took me to a follow-up doctor's appointment, and their mom made me food. Wendy, my boss at the time, who's just this bright and incredibly enthusiastic person, came over to make me smoothies and showed me how her family cut mangoes. She also brought her baby over, and he shined his light on me. Sade, my best friend at the time, she came over to laundry my bloody clothes and fundraised to buy me new ones when the dry cleaner said that they weren't salvageable. She took me on walks, held my hand, and played music for me. I felt cared for. So it's at the 6-week mark of having my jaw wired, and with the love and care of my chosen family, that I finally had the strength to break up with this dude. Yes, thank God. And the next day at the doctor's appointment, with each untwisting and pulling off of the wires off my gums and teeth, I felt freer and freer. Now, over the years, I've thought about these metal plates as different things, like they're my fussy tenant who complains about the weather, how much smiling and chewing that I've done. Or like they're these titanium wings constantly fluttering against my jawbone. On a good day, they are a sturdy lighthouse that beckons my smile home. At my worst, they are my enemy, a psychologically and physically painful reminder of a time when I was abandoned by my partner after a tragedy. But at my best, they remind me of my survival and of the love I received from Grandma Havorka and my chosen family in a time when I had great need. Thank you.
Preston, thank you for that brave story celebrating chosen family, which is so important. One of the themes of the night will be, hey, guess what? You're a caregiver. And that is because we're in human bodies with unpredictable situations. One of which was that one of our storytellers fell ill and is unable to be with us here tonight. But I did want to acknowledge Aitha Joynes of United Workers of Maryland. She was hoping to share her story and had done the prep work to do so, and wanted to tell us about the isolation that she felt after the birth of her first child and her partner's struggle, their struggle together to piece together childcare and full-time work. And I know that's a story that everyone, many people in our economy can relate to. So it's disappointing, but we want to honor Aitha's effort in putting together a story and by sharing this video.
Hello, my name is Aitha Joynes, and I would like for you all to see me as an enthusiastic soccer mom, a community organizer, and someone who really believes in the power of storytelling as a tool that unites us and also builds awareness to the struggles that we are going through, that millions are going through across this country. Personally, to me, caregiving is extending oneself to care for those that you love, whether it's your friends or your family. It's like the ground that we step on. It's the earth. It's our foundation. And it's the foundation that is given to those that we love and care about when we're providing them care in their time of need. Telling my story is important because first, it's my lived experience. No one else can tell my story for me. And it's important that I tell my story because it's a valuable tool in organizing, and it's a valuable tool in really empowering others when they see and hear what you've been through and can relate it to themselves. It's a way of not feeling isolated and feeling like there are others and you're not alone.
So, hey, Aitha, we miss you. Our next speaker will be Kris Garcia. Kris comes from Colorado, is a parent, and has been a relentless advocate for paid family and medical leave, both in his home state and federally. Kris dreams of making these kinds of inclusive family supporting policies sometime in the future himself when he runs for elected office. And here are some insights from Kris.
Hi, my name is Christopher Garcia, and I want you to see me as a father, a caregiver, and as an advocate. And I am a storyteller because I feel that sharing our stories can make a positive change and a powerful impact on people. Caregiving for me is having the peace of mind to be able to be there for my family and friends when they need me the most, knowing that I can be there at a moment's notice should they give me a call. Telling my story is important because it allows us to connect with each other. Even though we come from all different walks of life, the impact that our stories share, sometimes you feel like you're all alone, and hearing that somebody else went through it, sometimes gives you hope, because it's like, if you see that they've made it through to the other side, lets you know that not only has somebody been through that same or similar situation, but that there is, hope on the other side once you get through it. That there is somebody that's been through it and, can go through it with you. Last July, I got the opportunity for my dream job. See, I work at the airport, so I get to play with planes all day. And my dream job, from the very first day I walked into the airport, was driving one of the Move Team tugs. These bright, big orange tugs with a Yeti sticker on the front. The guys in their black uniforms with bright orange vests. That's what I aspired to be, the Move Team. So the Move Team is like the special forces. These guys come in, they pick up the planes, they take them from the concourse to the hangars. They go out to the taxiways and active runways and pick up disabled planes and bring them in when we need them. So when I was given the opportunity to go for the Move Team, I was excited. I was ecstatic. That was the very first call. I told my wife, hey, I've been accepted. I get to try out for the Move Team. And the next 2 weeks, as I prepared to go into training, that's all I could talk about with my wife, my family, my father-in-law, her grandfather, everybody I could talk to. I was just super ecstatic. This was my dream job. This was what I wanted to do. So as I got prepared, I knew that the next 6 weeks were going to be grueling, that only 30% of people actually complete the training. Each week, we were going to be tested, and you had to score 90% or higher to be able to move on to the following week. And the first week came, and unfortunately, we lost one of my classmates, didn't pass. Second week came, we lost 2 more classmates. And so as the third week came, we were super nervous. This was one of the hardest weeks. It's a week where we have to learn a different language, a language all in its own. It's how to speak with the FAA towers. And this is a language that you don't use in everyday life. So it's not like I could walk up to a friend and practice it. You only have each other to talk and practice with. And so for those 4 days leading up to the test, that's all we did was practice and practice and practice till we could practice no more. But we were ready. We were going to go in and take the test. And so everybody at home knew I was going to be testing that day. And I get to work and I get a phone call. And I silent my phone. And then I get another phone call and I silenced my phone. And then I looked at my phone and I had a text from my wife. Call me. And I was a little nervous because typically I don't get phone calls from my wife at work, especially on a day when I'm going to be testing, and everybody knew I was testing. So I nervously called my wife and asked her what was going on. And she mentioned that her grandfather had been taken to the hospital. He was being transported to the VA hospital. He was having problems breathing. And a sense of dread came over me when I heard VA hospital. See, in 2009, I had lost my dad at the VA hospital. And the VA hospital in Denver was one that I knew all too well. For 6 years, that was the hospital where 3 days a week, for 5 hours out of those days, I was at the hospital holding my dad's hand when he was on dialysis. And every now and then, 2 weeks at a time, for when he had his congestive heart failure and he was having procedures done. So that hospital just brought a sense of dread. It brought a sense of, oh my God, what is going on? And then it happened again. I had put work before my wife. I told her, hey, let me get back to you. I've got to get back to work. And as I hung up, I felt something in me just drop. I saw the trainer come in and he pulled me into the training room. And he gave me the first set of directions: push back, take a left, make a right on Lima, go to Zulu, straight to the hangar. And I processed it and I repeated it and then waited for the second set of instructions. And all the while, the words I had told my wife played in my head. How could I have done this again? Then the second set of instructions came, and I looked and I paused and I told my trainer, I can't do this. He said, what? I said, I'm sorry, I can't do this. It's like, Kris, what's going on? He's like, you've been here early every day, you leave late, what's going on? I said, there was an emergency. My wife's grandfather is being transported to the hospital. He's having issues, he can't breathe. I can't do this. And he stood up and he walked out of the training room, and another sense of dread came, because when my dad had gotten sick at my previous job, for taking extra time after my dad's funeral, I had gotten a 3-day suspension. And so here it was, another sense of dread. And so as I patiently waited for the trainer to come back in and let me know what was going on, I saw him open the door and the supervisor was with him. Again, oh no, here we go. 3 days. That's all I heard was 3 days. And I sat there quietly and I'm trying to gather my things, and it's like, oh. So now the hospital and a 3-day suspension. This is gonna go over really well. And then they stopped me and they said, is 3 days gonna be long enough? I said, what, I get to pick my own suspension? How does this work? 3 days. Yeah, is 3 days gonna be long enough with your family to get stuff figured out? 3 days to be with my family? Are you sure? Like, that's good? And he said, yeah, we want you to be able to take some time. You know, this is a very intense job. Your mind needs to be here. So if it takes 3 days for you to get stuff situated, then you can have 3 days. Yeah, that sounds great. He handed me his card and he said, yeah, while you're getting your stuff ready, one of the supervisors is coming to get the van, and he's gonna take you to the parking lot so that you can get to the car faster and you can get home with your family. I called my wife as soon as I got to the car and asked her immediately, it's like, hey, do I come home? Do I pick you up? Do I meet you somewhere? What do we need to do? And she said, no, come to the house. We need to get some stuff situated before we can go to the hospital. And as I sat there and I hung up the phone with her, it brought such a sense of relief that this time, that same number, those 3 days, had a completely different impact on me. This time, I was going to be able to be there for my family, for my wife, for her father, for her grandfather. It was going to be different this time. So come January, it's been 6 months since I was leaving the move team training. And I had been told I could come back in 6 months and reapply. And I ran into the guys on the ramp. They had pulled in, they were waiting for a plane to come in for us to bring in during an emergency. And the guys saw me and they pulled over and said, "Hey, Kris, we've been waiting for your application. When are you gonna come? We've been waiting for you." And I said, "It's kind of funny." So the 2 weeks after the incident, my son got a job here. And I now have a new dream. My dream now is to train my son to be a lead, just like me. And so for the last couple months, I've been living that dream. I now have Jacob working side by side with me on the ramp every single day. And, so sometimes when I think about how I thought that all hope was lost when I thought I was giving up my dream job, I realized that it wasn't giving up my dream job. I was walking into a new dream. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Kris. Our next storyteller is Rhonda Wilson of Georgia. She's a devoted activist with her state's chapter of 9 to 5 National Association of Working Women, helping working people learn about their rights and organizing them for a better future. Meet Rhonda in her own words on this video.
Hello, my name is Rhonda, and I want you to see me as a friend, a supporter, one of your homegirls, and overall, as a brown woman. The first time I saw someone give great care, that was actually a coworker who is now a really, really good friend. Witnessing her care for her family the way she did, and just seeing the different roles that she played and doing it without expecting anything in return. She did it because she cared. Telling my story is important because I want people to realize the full scope of different narratives. Heard of different stories where people needed care, where I was just kind of struck, taken aback. So it's important to tell my story just to show a different perspective and for people to learn a different perspective and open their minds a little bit more on the different ways to help someone else. When relocating to Atlanta, I was so excited for this new chapter. I was newly single, in a new city, had a new job, got a new place. At the time, I remember a coworker suggested that I try a website called meetup.com as a way to, get out and socialize a little bit more. So for those of you who aren't aware, meetup.com, it's a great platform. You join other groups that you share similar interests with. So for example, if you love art shows, if you're a foodie, as we used to say back then, there's a group for that. So I joined the Single Ladies Group of Color. So in the beginning, our group was pretty large. We used to do events like, meet early mornings on the weekend for coffee in Midtown, meet at Piedmont Park, and simply just take a walk. Early on, I could tell there was a small core group of us that was starting to break away, and we were forming our own connection. That was Jessica, Maria, Lisa, and myself. So we would text each other a few times a week, started calling all the time, and then we started doing our own little hangouts between each other. I remember one evening, I get a phone call It was a doctor from Emory. She tells me that Lisa came in on an ambulance unconscious, and from what she can tell, she had a brain aneurysm. I was in shock hearing that news, but then I was a little confused as to why she was calling me. So the doctor continued. She went through her phone. She noticed that my name, Maria, and Jessica were the last names that she saw from earlier that day, who Lisa spoke to. She figured she'd reach out to us. She wasn't able to locate any family names or emergency contacts listed in her phone. So the doctor made it clear Lisa needed support. She needed it now, and that I was it until click. Okay. As I kind of stood there staring at my phone, I noticed that Jessica was texting me while I was on the call. So I gave her a quick call back. Jessica jumps into the same thing. Hey, a doctor from Emory just called. You hear what's going on with Lisa? I said, wait. Before you go too far, let's conference Maria in to see if she got the same call. Brought Maria on. She went through the same thing. So they were going back and forth, and I'm thinking the whole time, like, this isn't our responsibility. It's not any of our responsibility. I barely know these ladies. Like, we met not even a month prior. So they kept going on and on. Then I kept thinking to myself, well, Lisa's here alone and no one else is here. And we're all in that same situation. We're single, we're in a new city, there's no family close. As Maria kept going on, I interjected and I said, well, what are we gonna do? Jessica says, well, I work third shift, so I can go into the hospital, late evening and stay till I have to report in late that night. I said, well, I work second shift Tuesday through Saturday, so I could come in late morning and leave later in the afternoon. Maria said, well, I don't know if y'all know, but I'm unemployed, but I still get up early. So I could be at Emory first thing in the morning and stay until, Rhonda relieves me. That moment, we all agreed. Emory was so accommodating for us. They offered us parking passes. They gave us lunch vouchers every day. The nurses kept us all in a loop with each shift. The doctors kept us very informed, and we kept that routine going. Lisa was unconscious the first month that she was in there. So we would do things like read to her, tell her what's new with us, put lotion on her hands and her feet. Then when she slowly gained consciousness, we started doing things like helping her walk to the bathroom, walking through the hospital hallway. During that time, we discovered that Lisa and her family were amongst the dislocated residents from New Orleans, and due to Hurricane Katrina. So she had only been in Atlanta only a month prior to even joining the meetup group. The doctor was also able to locate her daughter, who was living in Houston at the time. And her daughter confided in us, stating that her employer was giving her a hard time about coming to retrieve her own mother, even going as far as threatening her if she dares set foot out that door to go to Atlanta. Because of that, Emory ended up keeping Lisa an additional 3 to 4 weeks. But we all still stayed by her side. We also discovered that, her daughter, she was able to come down also and bring the truck, get everything situated. We helped her clean her apartment out. and she brought her mom home finally. Overall, that stay at Emory for Lisa was a little over 4 months in total. About a month after Lisa went back to Houston, she gave us all a call. She thanked us for, coming to her aid, helping her time of need, and that she was still kind of slowly recovering. I remember being on a phone call with my mom and grandma at the time, and I'm telling them, what's going on with Lisa and that she's at Emory Hospital. And, oh, wow, was their only response, which kind of surprised me. They didn't understand why we were even doing this. I mean, they were aware that I only knew these ladies a month before all of this even happened. See, my family, my immediate family is very small. So my only experience with care was only with us, no one else. That experience showed me that caring goes beyond your blood family, and that it's okay to care for someone, even if they're not a direct relative. We all still need care. Thank you.
I told Rhonda earlier that when she says that line, I just want to say, amen. It's the truth. We all need care. And thank you for that amazing story of showing up when totally unexpected. Our last storyteller tonight is another one of my colleagues at Family Values at Work, Tony Iovino. He's on the development team at Family Values, and he's also a candidate for county commissioner in Michigan. He's currently serving as our individual giving manager, so I encourage you to give him all of your money after this event. But in the meantime, let's get to know Tony a little bit from this video.
Hello, my name is Tony Iovino, and I want you to see me as an uncle, a brother, and as someone uniquely positioned to tell this very powerful story. To me, caregiving is both a duty, an honor, and something I find very centering. I say it's a duty because for me, family is a very big deal, and being able to be there for someone when they need it the most, when they need that care, I feel it's my duty to be able to be there. It's an honor to be able to actually go do that. I come from a large family, an international family, where caregiving looks very differently based upon where you live. And finally, I find it centering. When I'm doing caregiving, all the other stressors of everyday life melt away, and it's very clear to me what's important in that moment, and it's who I'm caring for and where I am. Telling my story is important because I'm a straight white guy living here in Michigan. I've always known I've been a straight white guy, and I realize I don't necessarily look like a caregiver or what folks may think of when they think about caregiving. But they should, and I hope more people do. And I also have to own that folks like me are the people that are standing in the way of these caregiving policies. So I feel like it is very important for someone like me to raise my hand and go, hey, I'm a caregiver too. These issues affect all of us. And so that's why I think my story is so important to share. I am the proudest uncle in the history of human existence. And I will fight you about it if you want. They don't really make a shirt for that. And my story starts a little bit differently. Mine starts on a Sunday night. I'm someone who's struggled with the Sunday scaries in the past. And so my wife and I, to combat that, we started a kind of a new tradition. We'd make a nice meal on Sunday night. We'd watch something on TV, and that was really helping and sort of taking my mind off of it. So I still remember steak tips, fingerling potatoes, had some nice wine, and we had an episode of Maisel ready to go on TV. Perfect Sunday night. My dog Tucci was right next to me. I'm not a childless cat lady, but I am a childless dog dad. So we can unite and be one. So we're all just about to sit down. I don't think either of us had even taken a bite, and the phone rang. I'm not great at answering my phone to begin with, and when we're eating, never really. My wife happens to look at the phone, and I do too. And it doesn't come up for a second, but then it comes up, a hospital. And something snapped, almost felt like it broke in my brain, like I just stepped on a twig or something. And I just had this sense, this is bad. And so my wife did pick up the phone. And it was very scary, terrible news. There was a car accident. My brother Dave, my sister-in-law Katie, their little boy Mikey had been in this awful accident. They were going to the hospital, and that's all we knew. We didn't know how bad. Were they alive? The little boy. Panic. We didn't know for a couple hours. Those minutes felt like days. The hour felt like a decade. Finally, we do hear what I think I had known and what my brain was trying to protect my heart from. We had lost Dave in a moment. He was gone. In fact, the car wreckage was so bad that the firefighters later told us that had Mikey, the little boy in the back, not cried out or made some sort of noise, they would not have even known that anyone else was in the car. And so now we have to get to a hospital, already knowing we've lost one family member and we don't know the status of these other two. Katie, my sister-in-law, had a horrific gash in her head. She was in and out of consciousness. She had shattered her arm. Mikey somehow, miraculously, had some bruising, but was otherwise okay. Traumatized for sure, but physically, he was okay. I still remember, he's okay. And what broke my heart so much that night was Katie, even as she's in and out of consciousness, all she wanted to do was hold Mikey, but she couldn't because she was so injured and it would hurt so bad. And that was very hard for Mikey to understand. So I just remember in those moments feeling so helpless and thinking, Dave, what on earth would you want me to do? And I just started picking Mikey up. And I held him and I held him and I held him forever. I remember at one point someone goes, hey, do you want me to take him? I think I don't know, I think it was like a nurse or something. I shot this person, I think daggers through my eyes of like, are you kidding me? Like, I will hold this kid until the end of freaking time. Like, I will figure out how to grow new arms when they get tired. It doesn't matter. We'll figure this out. And so family are arriving and everyone's coming and we have so much to do. We have to care for Katie. We are just learning through this accident that Katie was pregnant. She had just recently found out. She had told one or two people, but she was going to tell our whole family the next weekend. And so now we're obviously concerned and worried about that. Thankfully, we'd had that checked out and everything was okay. But she still had so much a long road to recovery. Out of my entire big, fun, crazy Michigan family, I was the only one who had access to a paid leave program. The only one. There is no state program, and as we know, there's no federal program. So it's like Sunday, now it's like 4 a.m. into Monday, and I remember writing my supervisor and my team and just going, I don't even know how to tell you what's happened. I gotta go, and I don't even know what's gonna happen. But I knew because I had paid leave, I didn't have to worry about my job and I could just focus on Mikey. And so that's what I did for weeks, was I just thought about that little boy and how I could spare him some pain and maybe bring him an ounce of comfort. I remember a couple days after the accident, now we're doing the funeral. And my job during the funeral was Mikey duty,
because over the past couple days, we had just been inseparable. And, mom had so much to do. Katie had so much to do during that. She had to give the eulogy. She, all these different things that are just impossibilities. And so I had Mikey, and it was about maybe a 60-minute service. And I remember just thinking, hoping, oh gosh, I hope somehow he makes it through this service. And we're 30 minutes in, he's doing fine. 40 minutes in, moving. 45 minutes in, he's melting down. I'm like, oh no. So I just kind of glance over at Katie, at mom, and I just sort of instinctively go, okay. I grab him and I get out of the room. We're in this big church, and they have this tiny little playroom in the back. I close the door, and he's just crying and crying and crying. And I feel so helpless, and just all I want to do is take this kid's pain away. And he doesn't even know why he's in pain right now. And there was this tiny little window, and because I could not get him to stop crying, I wanted to jump out of the window. And I just kept playing, hoping that something would work. And a few minutes later, he stopped crying, and we're playing. And we watched an episode of his favorite TV show. And something happens in me that clicks. Maybe it was a little of Dave going, you've got this somehow. You're going to figure this out. And so we figured it out. Katie made a full recovery. She's back at home now. And we just celebrated baby McKenna's 1-year birthday. It was an amazing day. Mikey's 4. He just started a new school. I've done preschool drop-offs. I've done Paw Patrol days. I've done, the weird things I've done now that I did not expect. But they've been joyful every moment. Dave and I were both big baseball guys. It's one of the things we bonded over. And I got the opportunity to take Mikey to his first Major League Baseball game. I would have loved to have done that with Dave, but I know he was happy that we did that together. When McKenna was born, I was able to take her home from the hospital. I was the one who walked her out of the hospital. I'll never forget that. None of that is possible unless I had a paid leave policy. I would have been worried. Couldn't have been there. I would have been at home. My mother-in-law cared for Katie while she was recovering, and she took FMLA, which we passed many, many years ago, but it is unpaid leave. My family are farmers, small business owners, CNAs, preschool teachers, the same people that we clapped for during the pandemic, hailed as heroes. You're essential workers. You're the top of the food chain. Where the hell is their paid leave if they're so essential and important? We treat them not like they are essential. And so my message that I want to leave with you tonight is that this issue is one that affects everyone, and it may find you in a moment when you had no intention of being a caregiver. But I'm so thankful I found family values at work when I did. I had access to a paid leave policy when I did, and I could be there for Mikey when he needed it the most. And I know my brother Dave would have appreciated that. So I was going to say, when you all go back to your communities, whether you're here or whether you're viewing online from all across the United States, I was going to say, politely, we should ask candidates for office this November, what's their stance on paid leave? No, I'm over that. I'm ready to demand from people, you better support paid leave. And instead of, I don't even want to ask you, do you support it? I want to know, how much do you support it, and how are you going to get it passed this next legislative session? Thank you. So when we leave here tonight, I hope you leave inspired. I know I am. I've made a promise to myself that by the time Mikey and McKenna are 18 years old, they will have access to paid leave. I don't exactly know how we'll get there, but we will. I really hope it doesn't take until one of their 18th birthdays, but I'm in it that long if that's what it takes. Because one more day is going to be too long without paid leave. I want this passed for Dave and Katie, for Mikey and McKenna, and so that no family ever has to face a tragedy alone again. Thank you.
I have all these fancy calls to action in my notes, but I think you can take what Tony said as your duty going out of here. I do want to say thank you to you all for showing up, all of our friends who are online, the watch parties that are happening tonight and in the subsequent days. Thank you for caring about these issues. Thank you for listening to stories. Thank you for connecting with us in this way. We're grateful also to our host committee, to the many Family Values at Work staff who showed up to provide support behind the scenes tonight, to the staff of the MLK Library and our friends at DC Action Lab who have helped with a lot of the logistics. I would be remiss if I didn't ask Laura Collins to stand up, our culture change manager who was Laura was the guts and the brains of this whole evening, and has just done an amazing job. Many rounds of applause to come. I also want to ask our storytellers to stand up one more time and tell the audience thanks for being here. I want to thank them. And I just want to close by saying, you know, these stories are remarkable and not remarkable. We are all caregivers and we're all receivers of care. And I hope that you can take some of these stories home, share them with people you know, family, friends, coworkers. I hope you'll share your stories on the postcards that we have out in the lobby. You can fill them out and add your email address if you want us to contact you and follow up. On the back of your program is a QR code to sign the pledge to be a care voter this year and every year. And in addition, like Tony said, take these stories to heart and take them out into your advocacy and demand the policies that will support our families and our ability to care for ourselves and a care economy that allows us to thrive. Thank you so, so much for being here tonight. Good night.